What's up, leaders? What's going on? Welcome to another episode of Leave From Here Podcast. I'm Jason. Today, we're talking about time management technique for leaders. This is really kicking off a week or two of time management techniques that I'm going to cover and kind of go over that are important and have impacted me in some way or shape or form over the years. Over the next 5 or 6 episodes, I'll cover things like the Pareto principle, Parkinson's law, Pomodoro technique, the time blocking, and the Eisenhower matrix, or the time management matrix, however you look at it. While I will talk about those topics briefly in this video, we will go deeper into each topic as we get deeper into the weeks here. So why time management techniques? Why are we focusing on that? And this is something that, as a leader, you deal with a lot of different things. You're balancing a lot of different plates when it comes to your people versus the business versus your customers. And it's important for you to balance that all effectively and get things done. Don't get me wrong, time management is very important for everybody. But when you're a leader, I think it kind of levels up your need to really understand your time, how it's being used, and being as effective as possible. Nobody works 10 hours a day effectively for all 10 hours. That's not what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, whatever time you are working should be the most effective you can possibly be. And one of the time management techniques we cover over the next couple of weeks, you may be able to utilize those to find your peak effectiveness when it comes to managing your time. Time management is such an interesting word. When you talk about it, a lot of people will have things to say of things they don't agree with, things that they think is ridiculous. There's a ton of stats out there you can find, but the few that kind of stick with me and things I utilize in my daily practice, and it also helps support my people in their daily practice. And number one is that, most employees will spend about 2 hours and 53 minutes of time actually working on their dedicated work that is relevant to their job every day. 2 hours and 53 minutes doesn't sound like a lot when you're looking at an 8-hour window. So it's important for you to understand what that looks like. What are they focused on? Where are they getting pulled off? Because I think number two connects to that, and that is 90% of employees check their corporate messaging system, so whether that's Slack or Teams, up to 5 hours per day. Think about how much time that is for an employee to spend just messaging people, emailing. Not saying that should not be a large chunk of your day depending on your job. There are definitely jobs where it's important to stay that connected. But at the end of the day, it's still a significant amount of time. And if you as a leader are not paying attention to that, ultimately you could be exacerbating that problem instead of helping it. The last one is something that's stuck with me more recently now that we moved to kind of remote work, is that multitasking costs 6 hours of productivity per week per person in your company. So having people multitask, like being on a meeting and trying to do work while they're on a meeting, or trying to do two things, look at Slack and do work, you're impacting your ability to be effective. And again, if you as a leader are not paying attention to this, you can actually exacerbate this problem and impact your people's productivity. So it's important for you to balance out all of these things. And as with a lot of things, it's important for you to understand your impact on your team and the business and your customer. So understanding how your time is working and how you're managing your time and how you're effectively doing your job to support your people helps you see, and also helps your people see, how they can run their day and organize their time and understand how to be effective in their role. Lead by example. This topic comes up over and over, I realize that, but that is the key. Lead by example. One of the best ways to do that from an effectiveness perspective is time management. Being able to show that you can balance all these things effectively, get the stuff done, and get back to people in a timely manner. People see that and they go, man, how does this person do all of these different things and still get back to me, and they still respond very quickly? There's nothing worse, and I've been guilty of that fairly recently, is that people message you and then they're just like, yep, I'll wait a day for that person to respond. I hate that became my norm, is that I would see a message, I would create a to-do message for it, or I would not, and I would forget about it for a day. Whatever it was, people started expecting that they would have to wait for a day for me to respond. It's unacceptable, and something that I am working heavily on to make sure it doesn't happen anymore. And I do that by making sure that I have time dedicated every day to look at the things that are most important to me from a communication perspective, not just my daily work. So I think you get the point. At this point, time management is critically important to make sure that you are doing the most with your day to get the most stuff done to support your people, especially as a leader. So with that, let's talk about the 5 time management techniques we're going to cover over the next couple weeks. So the order of these things is kind of set up to the way that I kind of got introduced to time management, and the things that I stepped through from the first topic to the second topic and all the way down to the end of this is kind of how I've progressed. And as I've gotten through all of these, I've actually realized that my time management technique is a mixture of all of them, depending on what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to work on. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the individual topics, but ultimately I didn't find what I needed in any one of these, and I was able to finally craft what I felt was a very solid time management technique that I will cover at the very end, which is kind of a mixture of a few different ones. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first one is the Pomodoro technique. So this sounds silly because if you know what Pomodoro means in Italian, it means tomato. So where did that come from? Well, the person that invented the Pomodoro technique used to use the old tomato timer. And that was set to 25 minutes. So the basic premise of the Pomodoro technique is alternating Pomodoros and breaks of time to give your mind a break. A Pomodoro is a focused amount of time. In this concept, the prescribed time frames for the actual Pomodoro technique is 25 minutes of focused concentration, 5-minute break. 25 minutes of focused concentration, 5-minute break. You do that 4 times, and then after the 4th time, you take a 15 to 30-minute break. So basically, you're doing very short, focused windows of work, followed by little breaks. The second concept we're going to talk about is time blocking. Time blocking is basically taking your day and breaking it into chunks of very specific tasks or groups of tasks. And when you're in that block, you don't do anything but that task. From there, you just kind of break out your week and you look at all of your blocks and you stick to whatever that block is focused on. As a leader, this can get a little difficult, and we'll talk more about that as we get deeper into that video. The next one we'll cover is the time management matrix or the Eisenhower matrix. So the time management matrix is very focused on understanding the importance and urgency of a topic or an issue or a task. The matrix itself is actually a 4-quadrant setup where you have urgency across the top and importance down the side, and you break those quadrants up into specific groups, and you basically feed your task into that to understand where it falls within that matrix and what you should do with it based on that. Fourth one we're going to talk about is Parkinson's Law, and Parkinson's Law states that work will expand to fill the time allotted to it. So if you are given 2 weeks to do a 1 to 2 day project, you will take that whole 2 weeks to get that project done. While that sounds like, hey, I still have the deadline, that's great. If you're looking at it from a strategic perspective, it can put you in a bad spot if you let all of your things in that 2-week window go to that very end. Now you may have 2 or 3 things that are all due at the same time, and you may not have the time to do it. And last, but certainly not least, is the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule. The principle basically states that 20% of your work will be responsible for 80% of your output. And the last 20% of your output is covered by 80% more work. So it's important for you to really, as a leader, understand where to focus your efforts. This principle really shows that most things in life are not distributed evenly. So it's important for you to make your decisions about priority and where your focus should be based on the reality of the situation, not just, hey, we have this project, we need to do all of it at all times right now focused. It could be that you have to spend 20% of your time on this and 20% of your time on this and 20% of your time on that. And then that's going to get you a lot more output than focusing 100% of your time on one of those things. So those are the 5 topics we're going to cover. I'm excited to kind of dive into each one of these and get feedback and see what people have dealt with. And if you have dealt with any of these or used any of these or are currently using these, I would love your feedback. I would love comments and hitting me up on email or social media or however you want to get involved in the conversation. Ultimately, these techniques can really pull together what is important in your day-to-day activities. As a leader, as a team member, as all those things. And from a leadership perspective, it's always important to make sure that you're utilizing these things to set up your time effectively. It also helps you as a leader challenge what's being handed down to your team from an effectiveness perspective. You have 2 weeks to get this job done. You know it's a month. Cool. We'll try, but that doesn't sound realistic. And depending on the environment you live in, it could make your people feel more distrust or frustrated or burnt out. If you're in a healthy environment, it may see it as a challenge, you may see some innovation and creativity, but all of these things are a balance, and it's important to understand the greater picture, and being able to understand how your team works is very important. So one thing to think about also while you're going through this is to think about how you can understand your team's output and your time input from your team to build an understanding of how your team works, how effectively they work, and what they can get done in an allotted amount of time. Being able to understand that effectively allows you to be a better leader for your people, for your leaders, for the business, to understand where everything's going and understand why the team needs that time or doesn't need that time. That's where all these techniques will kind of come together, and you will be able to kind of create a very interesting picture, I think, when we're all said and done here. I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions or want to see maybe some other techniques that I haven't covered here, maybe covered longer down the road, let me know. I would definitely love to hear some other ones that I have maybe not experienced or know about. Otherwise, take care of yourself, take care of your people. If you like what you're hearing, please like, follow, subscribe. It would mean the world to me. Otherwise, take care.